This quiet Sunday afternoon will end in violence. For these men, violence is a day's work. They're the Cleveland Browns, champions of the National Football League. Behind them is 2,000 years of football tradition. Ahead of them, the drama and spectacle that is pro football.
Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing, where men and women search and research new ideas, creating new products and services that help to make the way you live and work more pleasant, productive, and rewarding. 3M Company, a world of new ideas.
3M Company, 3M Company. They make tape, Scotch brand tape, electrical and masking tape, recording tape, and videotape, 345 other kinds of tape.
What will they think of next?
3M Company, 3M Company. Tape recorders, office copiers, microfilm, and record systems. Tarnish you for silver care.
What won't they think of next?
3M Company, 3M Company. They make Scotch pack, oil in the bag, and Scotch Light glowing, license tag, photo film with colors bright, and offset plates for printing, right, Scotch stain repeller. What won't they think of next? 3M Company adhesives. The best you can get. And plastics. The strongest yet. Abrasives. To make things smooth. Racetrack turf for pounding hooves and plastic film with wood-like grooves.
What won't they think of next?
3M Company, 3M Company. Velvet coating cuts down glare. Safety walk for floor and stairs. Sashing ribbons with a flair. 3M Company makes them all. Nice things, good things, useful things. 27,000 things. 3M Company, 3M Company.
What won't they think of next?
This is a battlefield, 160 feet wide, 100 yards long. Here on 14 Sundays in autumn, a classic battle rages. Professional football is a 60-minute war, fought between two small, well-trained armies. It's a battle not only of brute strength, but of complex strategy. For the men who play it, a compelling challenge. For the fans who watch it, an exciting spectacle. Today, it's a multi-million-dollar business. But the game itself goes back into antiquity. Through the centuries, it has been played under various guises. Some of them rather bizarre. This was a football, the skull of a Danish pirate in 13th century England. At the same time, the Italians played a game, inherited from ancient Rome. Supposedly, a contest to see which mob could drive a pig's bladder across a goal, it was little more than a fenced-in riot. This was the game that Caesar's conquering legions brought to Britain. This, too, was part of the cultural legacy of Rome. It was a pushing, shoving free-for-all, and the English loved it. For centuries, it was banned by king and clergy, and its popularity grew. In 1823, A frustrated player at Rugby College broke what rules there were when he caught the ball and ran with it. It was the start of a new game called rugby. The game moves to America. Just after the Civil War, the Eastern colleges adopted as a way of settling school rivalries. Every college has its own version of the game, and for years they argue over the rules. Some schools have 25 men on a side, playing a 90-minute game on a field 140 yards long. But by 1912, the modern rules are adopted. Born out of compromise is another new game, American football. One thing doesn't change. It's still a game of violence. With formations like the flying wedge, there's no strategy, only brute strength. Injury and death are part of the game. In 1905, President Teddy Roosevelt thunders an ultimatum. Stop the bloodshed or football will be banned. In desperation, the rules are revised. The forward pass is legalized, despite protests that it will ruin football. Instead, it becomes the most exciting single element of the game, and the first wobbly passes signal the beginning of modern football. 60 years later, the game is big business. The men who meet here represent the 14 franchises of the National Football League. They're a new kind of football men. Most of them have never caught a pass or thrown a block in their lives. They're businessmen who dominate the $50 million a year empire that is professional football. Until the mid-1950s, pro football was a money-losing business. Now, in a single decade, it soars to phenomenal popularity. Television is the most important influence on the game's emergence. It creates 40 million new fans and pays the NFL $14 million a year for broadcast rights. In the pro football industry, men are the raw material. Each January, the NFL and its rival, the American League, fight over the graduating college stars. Both leagues hold a player draft to select rookies. Designed to prevent the wealthiest club from monopolizing the best players, the draft gives first choice to the last place teams. When the draft ends, the search for new players begins. This is the control center of the Los Angeles Rams scouting system, reaching out to almost every college campus. It's a system that includes men whose full-time job is the search for football talent. And it includes part-time scouts, ex-players, sports writers, and coaches. The Rams Scouting Organization represents an annual investment of $100,000. Over the years, a team builds a file on each prospect that goes back to his high school career. By fall, 1,000 names will have become 250. From these, the team will pick its 20 draft choices. Of the more than 400 players recruited each year, less than 100 will make a team. One, maybe two, will join the handful of men whose names fill the stadiums. Men like Johnny Unitas. 10 years ago, he was cut in training camp by the Pittsburgh Steelers. He drifted into semi-pro ball and quarterbacked a neighborhood team for $6 a game. As a free agent in 1956, he tried out with the Baltimore Colts. Desperate for a third-string quarterback, they gamble on Unitas. Within a year, he becomes the Colts' #1 quarterback. Today, he's the #1 quarterback in the game. Fran Tarkenton, quarterback of the Minnesota Vikings, is probably the most exciting player in modern football. In 1960, his first year, he plays behind a flimsy Viking line and ends up scrambling, from every defense in the league. What begins in desperation becomes, over the years, a consistent style all his own. He runs elusive patterns in the backfield, looking for receivers or a patch of daylight. Jim Taylor of Green Bay gets paid for running. Not fast or far, but often and hard. He's a reminder that football is still a game for men who love violence, for men who take pride in their own power. Jim Taylor delights in hitting and has a violent hatred of being stopped. He's a charging fullback in the tradition of Ernie Nevers and Bronco Nagurski, and he's one of the best paid players in the game. But no amount of money can persuade a man to play the way Jim Taylor does. In the 1890s, these men played for a few dollars a game. They're the Pennsylvania coal miners who endured the back-breaking monotony of the mines, 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. On their one day off, they played football, violently and recklessly. Makeshift teams sprang up, all within 50 miles of Pittsburgh. The games they played were really only ragged scrimmages, and nothing short of a broken leg was an excuse for playing less than 60 minutes. But they were the first to get paid for playing. They were the first pros. The link between pro football's past and present is a little town called Canton, Ohio. It was here on a hot September night in 1920 that a dozen men in shirt sleeves met and organized the first professional football league. Each franchise sold for $100. Today, Canton is the home of the Pro Football Hall of Fame, established to preserve the history and the excitement of the game. In this hall are enshrined the memories of the game's greatest players. The first of these was Jim Thorpe. As a pro from 1915 to 26, there were games in which he scored every point. There were long runs in which he left half a dozen tacklers dazed. He could punt a ball 90 yards and once kicked a 75-yard field goal. Here in the Hall of Fame is the heritage of Jim Thorpe. A battered helmet, an old blanket, and an enduring legend. George Halas is in the Hall of Fame because he was a founder of the league, and because it was sometimes only his faith and determination that kept it alive. His career began on the University of Illinois varsity half a century ago, under Coach Bob Zupke. In Halas's senior year, Zupke makes a farewell speech to the squad. Why is it, he asked, that just as my players began to learn the game, they graduate? Zupke's lament is Halas's inspiration. In 1920, he forms a pro team in Decatur, Illinois. Within 2 years, he moves his club to Chicago and renames them the Chicago Bears. 3 years later, the Bears ignite the game's first financial explosion. It begins with a magic name, Red Grange. 40 years ago, he's a college star at Illinois. In the golden age of sports, he becomes a public idol, the most exciting open field runner the game has ever known. In 1925, he turns pro and signs with the Chicago Bears. Thousands who had never heard of pro football packed the stadiums to see the Galloping Ghost. He's the first real star of the pro game, and he shatters all attendance records. drawing crowds of 70,000 and more in freezing weather and driving rain. In his first season, he earns $100,000. But in 1927, a knee injury forces him out for a year. After that, he says, I was just another halfback. But he makes the nation aware of professional football. His ultimate contribution is not so much his skill, but his name. When Sammy Baugh arrives in Washington in 1937, pro football is still an unsure business. He signs to play with the Redskins for only one season. But in everything he does, there's a desire to be better than anyone else. At throwing a football, he is. And he remains the Redskin quarterback for 16 historic years. In the 30s, the power game of Thorpe and the running game of Grange give way to the passing game of Sammy Baugh. The history of pro football is not always written on the playing field. In a swank Beverly Hills office, Clark Shaughnessy sits alone. For half a century, he was a brilliant football strategist, credited with the development of the modern T formation. Today, at the age of 73, he's a football doctor. His clients are teams, college and pro. He's paid to diagnose their weaknesses and redesign their strategy, just as he was paid 25 years ago to devise a strategy that revolutionized the game. These are the original plays Shaughnessy created for George Halas and the Chicago Bears when they met the Washington Redskins for the 1940 championship. The Bears had lost to the Redskins 3 weeks before. Their first play finds the Washington defense unchanged. On the second play, fullback Bill Osmanski sweeps around left end. With a crucial block by George Wilson, he goes all the way, 68 yards. This was the start of the most famous rout in the history of football. The Bears are unstoppable. The Washington defense is powerless. The final score is Bears 73, Redskins nothing. From this day, the T formation of George Halas and Clark Shaughnessy will be adopted by all the pro teams and most of the colleges. The T formation breaks the game wide open. In the years that follow, it evolves into a rollicking carnival of dazzling and unexpected plays. In the 1964 World Championship, one of the most exciting of all upsets rocks the Cleveland Stadium. Cleveland quarterback Frank Bryan explodes a series of long bombs that destroy the powerful Baltimore Colts, 27-0. The Browns had come into the game a decisive underdog. Now they're the champions. In the pro game, there's no certain victory. On any given Sunday, any team can win. In 1965, the Cleveland Browns are the target of every other team in the National Football League. This is their year to defend the title. The year begins in the July heat of Hiram, Ohio. For the next 6 weeks, these 80 men will exist in an isolated world where football is a way of life. This is the Browns training camp. Officially, no one is on the team until the season begins. Now, all they get is room and board. A third of them will never get a paycheck from the Browns. They'll be cut from the squad.
So we can get the pass off.
Blanton Collier is the Browns' head coach. He's never played pro ball, but after 37 years of coaching, he's an outstanding teacher. The average pro coach makes $25,000 a year. But Blanton Collier has won a championship, and so he makes more, and his job is secure, as long as he produces a winning team. Art Modell could never play for the Cleveland Browns, so he did the next best thing. He bought them. In 1961, he invested a borrowed $4 million. Today, his investment is worth $10 million, and it's not for sale.
There's no rah-rah in professional football. It's a cold, hard, commercial game. Only thing he said to the team before our championship game against Baltimore on December 27th, he said, you know what has to be done, let's try to do it. That was the end of what would commonly be known as a pep talk. We don't have that in pro football. The average player is sophisticated, mature, adult businessman. 99.9% of all our players throughout the entire National Football League are college graduates, unlike other major sports. They know they've got a job to do, and if they don't do it, they don't stay very long.
What you have in your mind controls what you do with your feet. If you're going to try to get me back here, and you'll step in this direction, you're going to try to cut me off over here. You see? Now, you got to come down the line of scrimmage. As you do, I think your feet will take care of themselves. Basically, in your mind, you have to know the general progression, that I'm given an area of responsibility. And I'm going to protect that area of responsibility against anyone who comes in there, whether it be blocker or ball carrier. I'm going to whip anyone that comes in my area. I don't care who he is.
These are the defensive linemen. Average weight, over 250 pounds. They are drilled in the fine art of violence. The elements of their game are guts, desire, and a total disregard for their own safety. Rookie Don Thiessen may lack the know-how of a veteran lineman, but he doesn't lack the desire.
I told Coach Nick Scorridge that I'll just forget about my life when I go in there. I'm not going to worry about it, what happens to me. It's just going to be a destroy type of deal. It's either me or him. That's the way it's going to be.
When he started, no one thought Frank Ryan would last as a pro quarterback. During 4 years with the Los Angeles Rams, he alternated between being blitzed and sitting on the bench. In 1962, he was traded to the Browns. A quarterback develops with time, some in 3 or 4 years, some longer, some never. Perhaps over the years, out of the accumulated experience will come the most elusive quality of all, leadership. It took Frank Ryan a long time, but in 1965, he has it all. The Browns players represent an annual investment of $750,000. It's an investment protected by Leo Murphy, their trainer. In his 16 years with the team, he's seen careers end on this table. Throughout the league, every player is taped. before a scrimmage or a game for his own protection. If a man fails to have his ankles taped, he's automatically fined $250. There isn't much glamour in pro football for Leo Murphy, but he does hold one record. In one season, he used 63 miles of adhesive tape.
Okay, that ought to do it. See how that feels.
In a way, Lou Groza's record is even more unique. In 20 years, he's made only one touchdown. But he's scored more points than anyone in the history of the game. Like every man in football, Groza is a specialist. But his specialty is narrower than most, and he's excelled at it longer. He's been the Browns' kicker since the team was founded, and it's never occurred to him that a 41-year-old man shouldn't be playing football. In 14 training camps, more than 200 men will fight the highest honor in the game, the chance to carry the ball. All will be measured against one man, Jim Brown, the finest runner in the game. In his 8-year career, he's gained more ground and scored more touchdowns than anyone who has ever played. Today, the only records he breaks are his own. To beat the Browns, this is the man who must be stopped.
I think I'd be playing football somewhere if I never got paid for it. To be in tremendous condition, to be out there and have that great physical feeling is something that I wouldn't want to miss. And you never think of payday out there. I don't think a guy who doesn't love the game will be out there very long. We have a term we use, a cup of coffee. A guy who doesn't love the game might come up for a year or two for a cup of coffee, and then he disappears from the scene.
Suddenly, all other music systems are as old-fashioned as the original phonograph. The reason? The new sleek-looking, superb sound. Wallensack tape recorders for '66. For example, the Wallensack 5300 stereo tape recorder. New Control Central has power-activated push buttons, 4-speed, 4-track operation, plus an AM/FM multiplex stereo tuner and 2 powerful speakers to surround you in stereo. Over 6 feet of beautiful slimline walnut furniture designed for any room. Or bring a more compact stereo tape recorder into your home. The Wallensack 5280. Detachable speakers swing out to fill your room with rich stereophonic sound. Slim design lets you hang it on the wall or place it on a bookshelf. And this swinger is dancing to the music of the new Wallensack 5150 tape recorder. What an array of musical talent at so low a price. Like solid-state transistors for instant warm-up and smooth contemporary design. The Wallensack 5150, available in mono or stereo models. See the new sleek-looking superb sound at your dealers now. When it comes to recorders, what you want is a Wallensack. 3M Company. What won't they think of next?
St. Mary's College lies in a peaceful valley in Northern California. In summer, it's a secluded retreat for the Sisters of St. Joseph and the Sisters of Mercy. In mid-July, St. Mary's is invaded by men of another calling. It's the training camp of the San Francisco 49ers. A year ago, they finished last in the Western